Hey, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. We are using Amplitude a lot here at Sanity as well. And our kind of joy of using Amplitude is like we used a lot of different dashboarding tools before, and we are, of course, like you, a product-led growth focused company. And what really stuck out for me was how it enables our teams to dig into data themselves. It really kind of unblocks the teams, unlike a lot of the other dashboarding tools, which basically ends up being everything you want to look into. You need to make it a work order. So I just wanted to say that this is kind of a conversation between two people from two product-led growth companies that use Sanity and Amplitude.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a bit of a love fest because for our team, we use Sanity every single day and really have found that Sanity has changed how we're able to do work and everything is so much more self-serve for all of our teams. And so I'm really, really excited to chat with you today as well because I think it's really changed how our marketing team and our growth teams operate in the last year.
Amazing. So thank you. So let's first just kind of understand your role in the company. What's your title?
Absolutely. I oversee our acquisition strategy within growth marketing at Amplitude. So I oversee how we grow our organic traffic, how we're growing and managing our paid traffic, as well as everything related to the website and its engagement and conversion. But that focus on growth also extends deeper into the funnel. And I work really closely with our growth product team as well, really focusing on both really like our product led growth motion as well as looking at some of our enterprise strategy as well. So, spanning any way that we are trying to get someone to begin to understand Amplitude and learn to love Amplitude.
Mm, mm. And you're like, what's the environment around you? Do you have a huge team? Who do you work closely with? Like, let's understand your life in the organization.
Absolutely. So, our growth marketing team is fairly new. I think it only was stood up in summer 2022, and it's grown really rapidly since then. And our growth marketing team within marketing is split into pods that mirror our growth product team. And so we have our acquisition pod that we're still also hiring onto for another web manager. We've got a retention pod that's really focused on helping users onboard, activate, remain engaged as they learn Amplitude. And then we have a monetization pod, really looking to bring a lot of our free users into our paid plans and continue to move them up in their paid plans. And that mirrors how our growth product team works as well. And so I work very closely across both growth product, but also within our growth marketing team.
Mm.
And I think even beyond that, the folks who are using Sanity, as most teams within the marketing organization are using Sanity.
Mm. In some form. So you're. Is it fair to say what do you call like I think of Amplitude as a dashboarding and a kind of analytics product? Like, is that how you would present it yourself?
We think of it more as a platform these days. I think Amplitude got its start in product analytics and really helping people answer analytic questions. But as our experiment product has matured and grown, and we have a customer data platform, we're really seeing more customers get value from using all parts of that suite and treating it more as a platform. And so I still think of it and I use it daily for analytics and experiment. And that's really where we got our start. But we're finding users are finding value from using it across the board and more in like a platform
Oh.
first direction.
So I can also use it as a CDP, like in my stack, like apart from just kind of interesting. I never knew. I should like probably read your website more. So so who are you talking to? Like what groups are you talking to?
Yeah, we find that most people who are coming and getting the most value from Amplitude are folks who are on product teams. A lot of marketers are starting to use Amplitude more as we're really ramping up our web analytics systems. And then we do have quite a few folks who are from data teams. So even as we're making data analytics easier, we're finding a lot of data teams are finding this as a helpful tool to help them accelerate, their work. You mentioned not having to have a work order all the time. We still have data teams who are using our data governance tools, but also using Amplitude to make their jobs faster. So really,
Mm.
I think of our groups as growth, which can be product and marketing, data, and then we do have quite a few engineers who are also using the tool, especially at some of the smaller companies who are signing up for Amplitude. You often find someone might be the engineer, but they're also the marketer, they're also the product manager, they may also be the data person for the first few years at the company.
Definitely been there, as
I can
all
imagine.
of the above. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, I forget to introduce myself. I'm Simon, by the way, and I'm a CTO and I'm a co-founder here at Sanity. I guess that's not vital, but interesting context. So let's think about your current use. Like you say, like everyone at your company is using Sanity, or everyone in growth, but like, are they using the same setup, or there are different setups? Like how? What's your current use?
Yeah, we use Sanity for our core domain, amplitude.com. And we do have other subdomains like our help center and our developer documentation and a few others, but really our core site, the one that has the most traffic and the most usage. Um, I'm finding that quite a few teams internally need to use that site. And so a part of my job, in addition to all of the very sexy acquisition words I just threw at you a few minutes ago, a large part of my job is also keeping our internal customers happy. So we have, for example, a field marketing team that's running events all over the world. And they're running events, multiple events every week where they need to make sure the registration pages are working. They're getting RSVPs, they're sending reminders. All of that is happening through Sanity, integrated with Marketo. And so I have to make sure that those 20, 30 folks who are standing up pages at a high volume and need them to work are happy with the components that they have. They're happy with the uptime and performance. We also have teams creating assets like ebooks and white papers and promoting those all through Sanity. We have I think we have very like functional teams, like the kind of keep the lights on teams, like our legal documentation and our legal pages all are on Sanity, as well as our press center is on Sanity. And so we have a lot of different internal customers that I'm also listening to, in addition to making sure our external visitors and customers understand what Amplitude is. I have to make sure that Sanity works for the 70 plus people who are logging in each week, and that they have everything that they need, and that the tool is intuitive and self-serve, and I don't have to be spending hours of my week every week training people on how to use it.
What do you think about it in terms of properties? Like if I, as an audience member, like of course amplitude.com would be one thing in my view, but like this in my mind, like Sanity.io is like a marketing site. It is a documentation site. There's like several properties inside there. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah,
What's your
I think of our pages at a high level as we have a lot of core product pages that really are telling folks what Amplitude is. We have an entire subsection of Sanity that is just about maintaining our blog and all of the content on our blog. And to get on a more technical level, these are all, I think of them as document types, or we refer to them as document types within Sanity. And so as we're creating new groups of pages and aligning those with permissions within the tool, we are organizing those as documents. And so even though we have 70 plus users, not everyone can touch every single part of the site. You know, when we've got
right.
kind of partitioned and living in their own environments, and we cater different parts of Sanity and parts of our dashboard accordingly based on our expected expertise for users. And so if we know someone is doing the same thing, you know, day in, day out, they're only creating one kind of page, we are going to make sure that that is as hard to mess up as possible for them. Make that easy,
Yeah.
really easy.
That's
to
one
learn.
way to put it.
Yeah. And for other pages where we know folks are going to want more design creativity, or we're going to have to create a wider set of pages, that's where I've worked with engineering to have those types of pages be much more flexible. It's going to be a little harder to get it right, but it's going to be easier to have it be beautiful.
Yeah, like we often, when we are asked about like advice around how to think about structured content, I usually talk about like making it. You should model the content so that everything people are working on makes like is what makes a difference to the business. It sounds like there's a similar thinking. Like some things are simple and constrained because that's what matters, and other things needs to be expressive, a little bit more work, but it matters. That's why you give the freedom.
Yeah. And certainly when we first were kicking off the migration, a lot of what we focused on was reusability. And so every component could be reused on a wide number of pages. And that really helped us as we were migrating people into using it, that we, again, weren't having to spend 20% of each week teaching people or serving ad hoc requests because everything was reusable. Now that we're fully migrated, we have people using it all the time. I feel like we're in our phase 2 or 3 of using Sanity, where now my education internally is telling people, actually, you can build whatever you want in Sanity. Just reusability becomes the factor where we're making trade-offs. Not as much will be self-serve, but you can create anything you want in terms of components. And we've had engineering teams come into Sanity and build beautiful bespoke pages that are doing things that our event pages don't. But that's because they're able to do that. You can kind of have the flexibility to do both.
Yeah, right. So you have the when it makes sense, you can do super custom stuff, but I'm guessing in terms of. So I recently was at Tecovas, the Western clothes brand in Austin, and their insight as they were setting up Sanity was very much in line with what you're talking about. You want to unblock our teams from doing what drives the business, and for them it was product launches, because for them keeping the brand alive and changing and everything, so always something new and interesting, that needs to be the kind of pulse, that needs to be fast, and everything is kind of optimized so that there are no chores. It's everything everyone is doing is about telling the story of the product, is about driving that kind of pipeline of change and interesting storytelling. And so that's what success looks like to them. I'm thinking similarly to your teams, and feel free to kind of divide into different your stories for each team, but what matters to the different teams? What does success look like for the different teams?
Yeah, I'll speak primarily for my team on the acquisition side. Really, I think of success as growing traffic and growing meaningful traffic, and then really growing engagement with the site. And so not only are we getting more people to come to the site, but are they finding something valuable? Are they visiting a second page, a third page? Are they taking a next step? And I always like to say my goal is to help people take the next step, because that can look different based on where you are in your journey, what your needs are. If you're a product manager and you just really want to understand statistical significance, it's success to me if you find our educational materials about statistical significance. Maybe you use a calculator, you read 2 pages and you leave. Great, that's success. If you are looking to download a tool and try it, and you go through and you sign up for our starter plan, great, you've taken your right next step. And so I really look at, from a very tactical metrics level, I'm always looking at total traffic, unique visitors, total site conversion rate. So that's of all users, what percent are taking one of 3 meaningful next steps, which are pretty standard, a form fill, signing up for our starter plan, or signing up to explore our free product demo, and looking at that conversion rate. And then I look at, especially on the product-led growth side, how many people are signing up for our free plan, because ultimately that is very important for, the top funnel of the business.
Exactly. Then you have delivered the value in terms of your activity.
Exactly. And to bounce off of your example, I think one of the ways in which we've really started to leverage Sanity against those goals is how fast it is to create content self-serve. We were creating 4 or 5 pages or posts a month pre-migration. And a lot of that was just the blog, but we weren't really creating net new pages on the website or making a lot of changes to the website because it was so difficult to do so. And now we're able to create, I think we created north of 50 or 60 pages in 3 months, all just for SEO and for educational content. And we're continuing to churn out a high rate of pages in terms of content and information at the top of the funnel. And especially for SEO, number of new pages produced is often like a leading input and indicator in terms of where your traffic will go. You just need more pages out there to start gaining rank and, reaching new groups of users. And so that's an area
Exactly.
where
Because like,
we don't do that
because
at
like
all.
sorry. No, because
Oh,
someone might think like that sounds like you are kind of creating a very huge and complicated website, but like this is of course the entryways. This is you casting a wide net of like opportunities to relate to your product. So
yeah.
you aren't cluttering up the main site in a sense by doing this.
No, I always think of it, especially in terms of organic traffic, as we can't meet new people if we are not showing up when they're asking a question. If someone is asking Google a question and we aren't showing up to answer it, we have to spend so much more money to meet that person and to show them that we can answer their question.
Exactly.
We have to buy their information as a lead, or we have to pay to show up in their Google search, or we have to hope they show up in an event or a conference we're at. We're spending so much money to get in front of that person. Whereas it makes so much more sense and creates so much more trust to just be answering their questions and be seen as the authority, answering any question that they might have. What is product-led growth? What is data management? We want to be the ones showing up and answering those questions.
Exactly. And then that's that. Even though you then create 50 pages, they all have to be good too, because if you land there and then you're ultimately disappointed, you don't get that second click, right? So you also have to do a lot of it, and you have to do it well, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. So these are your product launches. This is like the pulse that drives the growth in one sense, or like there's the whole funnel, of course, but that's interesting. So that sounds like an amazing unlock. Let's go back and talk some more about like how you work after we understand better what you came from. Like you talked about how you struggle to produce new content. Like what was your original, like where were you when you started the transformation?
In terms of deciding that we needed to migrate into a new site, or my
background?
background?
What did your tool? No, sorry. What did the tooling look like before? Like when you decided to you needed to invest in a new kind of stack. Where were you? You said it took a long time to do stuff, to produce content. Like why?
Absolutely.
And what were you on? Yeah.
I feel very fortunate that when I joined the company, we had just started kicking off the migration, and I still think my lucky stars I didn't actually have to use the old tool. We were on a little bit. Well, I used it enough, trust me.
Okay.
We were on a very old iteration of WordPress, but it was a very custom implementation of WordPress. And
right.
I've been in marketing and in product long enough. I've used WordPress, throughout my career, and used different iterations and used it for blogs. WordPress is an amazing tool, but I think for a long time, Amplitude hadn't meaningfully been investing in its website experience. And so because of that, the website had been built by, I think, years of one-off contractors, and there wasn't ongoing engineering investment. And that meant that the website in WordPress was like, I think of it as like a really big old ball of like tape and sticks and twigs, and no one actually knew how it worked. And the code was really brittle. We had outages, and only engineers could make changes to pages. So you talked about like a platform launch. If we're launching a new product, that required weeks and months of coordination and engineering time to change one page, to change the title and the basic components on a page. And so there were only 3 people in the company who were able to make changes to the website. The blog, folks were able to make updates to. That was still really onerous, and our content teams had to learn quite a bit of code just to even ship blog posts. But there were only 3 people, and they were all engineers who could make changes to the website. And so page redesigns took months and months of time in terms of design and effort. And so I think the company hit a breaking point of saying we need to be on a more flexible system, and we need a system that's more self-serve, and we need dedicated engineering resources for this part of our site experience, for our site. And they made the choice to go with Sanity. That was just before I joined. But I joined the company really as we were helming the migration. And for context, I have worked on CMSs before and on CMS migrations. I've been the product manager of a homegrown CMS, and trying to modernize that homegrown CMS was going to take us 2 years to make it meh and have a little bit less code. So I came directly
Yeah.
from a job where I went, oh my gosh, we're migrating. This is going to be the biggest headache. And
Yeah.
the migration into Sanity was much, much smoother. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, I mean, we sometimes some people treat and we think of it sometimes like as Sanity is this kind of framework for building a kind of homegrown CMS in one sense, or at least to be able to have that cake and eat it too. Like we maintain it, but still you get to do whatever. Like, was that something that was kind of part of the idea early on, or is that something you discovered later?
I think that was part of the reason we ended up going with Sanity was that flexibility. Like I mentioned, we were able to build a suite of reusable components that made it feel a little bit more like a standard CMS where people can come in and they know that they can use the utility component and the content component, and that has some predictability. But there is also this incredible flexibility to then also build anything we want. And that really future-proofs the site for us. And so as we're building new things this year, like calculators, we're creating, product supported calculators. We're creating things like the benchmarks tool. Those can be really complex and sophisticated because it's a headless CMS. It's not just here are your 20 components that Sanity has built. Good luck. And so I think that was a
So can you
huge step.
actually now just the nerd in me kind of just woke up. Like, are you powering the calculators with content from Sanity?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're creating.
Explain.
Yeah, we're shipping our first one in the next few weeks. We are creating calculators for simple formulas that product managers or other folks may want to use, like churn rate or not statistical significance, sample size. How do you calculate your sample size for an experiment? And the formulas are living in the back end, though we could have them surfaced in Sanity. But then users in Sanity in the future will be able to change like placeholder values, some of what the results show, some of the like design components of that calculator. And we can use that as a component in Sanity and then put some of our other components underneath it. So our FAQ component, maybe a text component. And that lets us stand up. Our goal is to be able to stand up like a calculator a week, kind of once we get going, because we've created a really nice rinse and repeat motion.
So now your calculators is kind of a content block that you can now kind of recontextualize in new content. Like you can make a statistical, not significance, but sample size calculator, and then but like for a different story, and you can then specialize the story for each kind of relationship you want to build.
Yeah, we are starting with them just on like landing pages and having those be really dedicated landing pages. But with the way that the components are built, we could put a calculator in line on a blog post. We could put it on one of our product pages. And so that component, that has like a really powerful formula behind it and can be dynamic, which I'm really excited about, and show you dynamic content based on your inputs, could live on any page that we wanted to.
Fantastic. And then now, so the transformation was so clear. Like I have a question here about like how to get the buy-in for a for a change. It sounds like I need the opposite question. How could it take so long? It sounds like, but that's I guess is a different. So clearly you had to change at that point. So and were you part of the kind of choices around that? Like I know Sanity was already picked for you, but like as you were building out the stack, have you kind of been part of guiding the how do you build out the stack around Sanity?
Yeah, to some degree, I've been involved in some of those pieces, and I think an important distinction just made was there can often be initial buy-in for a long-term migration, but it's really important as you're migrating and it's something that takes a long time that you are constantly refreshing buy-in for something.
Thank you.
Leadership can change. If it takes a year and a half, you have to constantly be looking at it and saying, this was still the right choice that we made 12 months ago. This is still the
Hmm.
right thing, and we can see impact. So even though I joined and we had already had a vendor selected and we'd had a few pages migrated, it was really important as part of my job to say, hey, we migrated this page and it's this much faster now, instantly.
Right.
And hey, we migrated this set of pages and this is how many people are now making updates self-serve. And so I would say, even though the initial decision-making had some buy-in, as we were migrating pages like our homepage, our pricing page, which is so important, our blog, I was constantly looking at, like, what are the site performance metrics here? How many people are now using this? How smoothly did training go? And reporting that up through my leadership, up through my leadership chain as well. And so I would say buy-in is always ongoing with the migration process. It's never just a
That makes
one-time
a lot
deal.
of sense. That sounds like a very, very valuable advice. We need to put that like up top. That sounds amazing. So like you keep focusing on the value as you deliver it, and you help kind of refresh the buy-in as you go. What are some of these, like you said, like the performance of the pages? You talked about team autonomy in a sense, or like self-serve. What are some of the things you would think of as the key kind of value drivers when you kind of wanted to argue for this?
Yeah. Site performance was a big one for us, because the old site had been pretty slow. And so I was using like the Google plugin Lighthouse to do before and after snapshots of how much faster the site was on Sanity. And I think part of that was moving to Sanity, and part of it was really having an engineering team take the time to, as we were redesigning and migrating a page, look at it through a performance lens and say, what are improvements we can make? And what are improvements we can bake into this code at a foundational level that everything is going to run faster, in terms of lazy loading images and making sure that all of the images are compressed performantly. And that lets us, with each migration, look at stats like fastest first contentful paint, time to interactive, and look at those before and after and say our pages are instantly faster. The other stat that I always look at is usage, both total number of users in the system as well as frequency of use. As I mentioned before, we only had 3 engineers updating the site at all before. So all of our lifts in usage are bananas numbers, because it's like, I think it's 119% lift in users. But that's because we had no one making changes before. And now people are making changes totally self-serve, and it's so many users that I think that was an easy stat to look at and say, hey, we just have more people touching the site. We all have conviction that that means the site is going to improve over time.
But you were also able to show some of these lower in like down funnel metrics go up as well. Like as you, for example, added more pages. I'm assuming like if you add 50 new pages and you don't see any results, that's a very sad moment in a sense.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a great note and a reminder. We had a wonderful Q3 last year, which was really our first full quarter after shipping. I think we'd shipped 45 new pages in the beginning of Q2 and Q3 really, really quickly. Again, like a rinse and repeat motion. We were getting high quality content, but we were able to stand it up and activate it really quickly. And so I believe it was Q3 is when we had 19% year-over-year traffic increase, especially organically, because we were producing pages at the top of the funnel. And we were able to improve our conversion rate because we could run A/B tests for the first time on our site. I think that's one of the most exciting projects we were able to do last year, was actually integrate Sanity with Amplitude Experiment. And that felt like such an exciting project, also kind of an embarrassing project to say.
Yeah. But it's
we're an experiment product. We're an experiment platform, and we weren't able to A/B test on our own
it's
site.
so typical, isn't it?
Oh, it's so typical. But the first few self-serve experiments we were able to run were really, really simple, and we saw massive lifts. I think it was my first test I ran, it was a 25% increase, 99% confidence in sign-up clicks. And I was able to run that self-serve. It was the first thing we ran. And I went, great, let's just keep iterating. We can do this without developer work needed for any test, because we're actually connecting our systems. These 2 systems we now have, and putting them together, and then we can just learn so much faster. So I think that's another great example of how we're able to grow, just because everyone can move faster and actually test the ideas they have.
That's perfect. Like one thing that frustrates me sometimes is some people say, "Oh, Sanity is a development platform." I'm like, yeah, but yeah, I get it. Like, of course, you have to write some code, but it is a platform for the content teams. Like, it is for the designers and developers to serve the content teams and for them to be autonomous and work fast. And I wonder how you think about that. Like, compared to, I would say some teams believe that tools that give them like total freedom to like do everything themselves, in my opinion, like that's why Sanity is like it is that creates lots of chores and footguns and trouble. And then what I've heard from like some design teams, like design agencies, they love when people pick tools like that because they never get rid of the design company, because like the agency just has to keep running the site for them. But I just wonder how would you make that argument, like to someone who would say Sanity is great for developers, but like how about the content team, which we sometimes hear and I struggle to.
That's so interesting. I would never cite that as a challenge that we've had with Sanity. I again came from a place where we had a homegrown CMS, and I was spending 20% of each of my weeks teaching someone how to use it in live meetings. And our engineering team, I had to budget easily 7 weeks of engineering time a quarter just to fix components that weren't working exactly the way the design team needed them to, exactly the way that our end users needed them to. And actually, when we finished the Sanity migration, I was telling everyone internally, okay, we finished this migration, but each quarter after this, we're going to have to spend like 2 to 3 weeks serving ad hoc requests for minor component changes. Like, I just know that that's going to happen. I'm experienced. I've gone through this before. And that has not been the case. We have worked on and partnered really closely with our design team on a few specific projects, to redesign a page or to go back and say, we migrated this, we actually want to improve it. But in terms of ad hoc requests, it's been next to nothing. And in terms of the content teams using it, I get pulled into meetings thinking that the 30 minutes is going to be spent training them. No, they've already learned it. They've already learned the tool. We have very little internal documentation about how to use Sanity. And people ask for it. And I say, just log in and take a look. And I don't hear from people. I don't hear from people again. And I have people, when they're setting up time with me, I think I'm supposed to teach them the platform. They actually just have really specific, fairly sophisticated questions about how to use a certain document type. They don't need the basics. And so I would say our content teams, we were really worried about our blog in particular, because that's a huge source of, it's like 20% of our organic traffic. There's a high number of users. It's a powerhouse for our whole company and our growth. We were really nervous about folks moving from a system they knew really well and having to do that change management. And it was really smooth. I've never had someone from our content team or one of the contractors come to me and ask questions or need training.
It's very likely that this is also partly because of how you used Sanity. Like that it was like our dream creating Sanity was like you should be able to build out a CMS so that it is structured the way your organization thinks. So that people don't have all of these questions, because like, how do you make a new project? Oh, you need to make a new document and then add the project template, or like that's what I'm used to from like traditional CMSs. But also it takes a little bit of a mindset from someone in your role. And what I see when it doesn't go super smoothly is these more siloed organizations, when like you have your designers and developers over here, and they like every now and then they have a check-in with their content teams, but they actually don't know what's important to them. How did you solve it? Like, why are you so successful at that?
I think from a people standpoint, and also I'm happy to show you what our dashboard looks like so you can get an example.
Oh, that would be amazing.
A visual example of what this looks like. But from a people standpoint, we work really, really closely with our brand design team, and they are really the ones who are experts on all of our components. And we don't make a change to any part of our padding, even on one part of our site, without running it through them. And they have high levels of buy-in on making sure that every part of the site is flexible and beautiful and functional. And really a lot of it is relationship building within our marketing team, so that each of those teams feels like they have buy-in on their part of the site. And they understand what our team does. They understand that my role is to grow traffic and grow engagement and make sure that more people are coming to the site. and that I care about taking care of them. And I think a lot of that is built through culture. It's built through a lot of conversations, a lot of transparency. Like when there are requests for new components or for new pieces of the site to be built, we always have a conversation of in taking their needs, in taking their requests, and then being really transparent with them about when we'd be able to do that versus our other projects. And the whole marketing team wants the company to grow. They understand that our website is the front door, especially for our product-led growth motion. Every single person who's signing up for our product has to come through the website, and the whole marketing team knows that. And so we've built a culture of understanding and collaboration of, okay, I maybe want this piece to improve on this set of pages, but maybe that can be done in a month and a half. Or if it needs to be done now, I know this other project is going to take a little bit longer. But I'm happy to show you some of how
it would be amazing.
Designed the site and thought about it. I will pull this up. Let's see. So I'll show you how we designed our blog, because I think that's one of the migration pieces that was the most challenging for us. Because our blog has thousands and thousands of pages of content, and it had thousands of pages of content in WordPress, and we needed to, in migrating them, we were also redesigning the entire blog. And so we were moving over so many pages, redesigning every single one, and we needed to have zero downtime and minimal change management as well. So you can see here, I talked earlier about thinking about our site as document types. And on the left-hand side, these are all of our high-level folders for document types, is the way I think about it. And so we have our integrations, we have our legal pages, we have our customer stories, all of our resources like white papers and ebooks, but also all of the landing pages for those are also in this section. We have our core company pages, all of those event pages I mentioned, where for that use case, we need that to be really standardized, easy to learn, hard to mess up. So they're in their own section. And then for the blog, we have a really rich set of content for the blog because there's so many different components of it. So you can customize the homepage for the blog and everything that you see on, the main core page of the blog here.
And then just to help visualize what you're building here, can you also bring up this front page so we just see, so we have an idea? Oh yeah, of course, you have an integrated preview. Perfect.
Yes. And again, I have not used Sanity for any other site. And so I look at this and I go, oh, this is what everyone's Sanity experience must look like. But this is a preview. I actually more commonly use the preview in a new tab function here just to see it full width, but this seems easiest for sharing. And there's a couple funky pieces here because this is going to show some unpublished content. But this is all of our content. And so each of these components we designed to have a mix of automation, having it pull the newest article. And then for some components, we also designed that you could change where this ad goes, for example. And so you could make this ad placement go someplace else within our rows and look different. This is a featured component we built. And so we can have different collections that are featured here. And it continues. And then we've got featured contributors as well. And so all of this maps really nicely to all of these components. You can see each row has its own section. There's the featured sections I mentioned and our featured authors. And within these, you can have a blend of pulling up, let's see, just the most recent articles, easy, rinse and repeat. You just auto pull the newest thing published. You can have one featured or put an ad in as well. And so we built a mix of flexibility as well as if you don't want to customize it, it's still going to work for you.
It can kind of be self-driving in a sense, the stuff that you don't like really, yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the biggest challenges we had in this migration was creating a really rich content editor because everyone was so used to WordPress. WordPress has been in the game for decades in terms of their content editing interface. And so we had to replicate that enough that the folks who were building content felt happy. And so a lot of this are the basics of creating a post like this. And then some of this we build, so like this is a panel component, but we had to build all of this inside a really rich content editor that felt really intuitive for users. And I'll collapse these so you can see. So when you click in here, this looks fairly simple, but you can actually expand this and then it feels more like the WordPress interface that so many people are used to. And, it's tragic to constantly pull up WordPress, but when there's a tool that so many people who you're hiring, who you're bringing in as contractors are used to that, it's really beneficial to be able to build something that feels enough like that and still have custom components that we've created. And so these panel blocks, pull quotes, block quotes, all of those have been pre-designed by our design team. So again, it's hard to build something into this that's going to break or look really bad. And even we've built things like you can add a ton of spaces. And for our Sanity implementation, we will auto remove all of those to make sure you cannot publish with poor formatting in our system.
Or you can, but nothing bad will happen. Or
or it's instant to publish over it again. Or one of my favorite tools, version history. I tell people all the time to use version history because you can revert really, really quickly and find a source of truth there. And a way that helps new Sanity users quite a bit is they know even if they publish something, they can revert really quickly. It's not permanent.
Right.
They know that they can go backwards. And I think that helps a lot with people onboarding. You lessen the fear when the lower.
Can we look at one of the custom components? It would be nice to see, because I think it's interesting. Not many tools have these kind of embedded objects that are still as rich. So that's okay, right. So here is a right. So that was the Canal Plus panel you showed earlier, right?
Yeah. So in here we for every component we build, we look at it visually, and then myself and an engineering partner break it down section by section. And at this point, we know enough of these sections to say, all right, here's the label for this panel. Even when you click into this, you get more rich features as well. So you can change the header type. You can add some basic formatting in here, like linking, lists, and then you can add images as well. You can also always expand an editor. And then it's so easy to preview this. So you can build this. And if we wanted to, we could add customization in here for the tag color, for example, or we could add richer formatting within this if we wanted this to become a even more complex object. We've intentionally kept this simple because I've seen
exactly, because I was about to say also you cannot do that, so that people don't worry about those things and spend less time on like worrying about the tag color.
Exactly. Or there's always a risk when you add more functionality into something that folks will start to use it for another purpose. It's like the design concept of desire paths. If you start to see someone misusing a component that you have built in a CMS over and over and over again, it means that you're missing something in your CMS where people's needs are not being met. And I've seen that over and over again. And that is often how we end up building new components. When we do build new components in Sanity is when we start to see folks repurposing something for another use case that it wasn't built for. We look at that and go, okay, I think we need a better table of contents component. I think we need better image solutions because people are working around our system rather than in it. And that's usually a good indicator that, okay, something's not quite right. We need to make improvements here.
And then it's valuable. Like you can invest safely in that because someone will already, in a sense, using it. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the blog system is one of the ones I'm the proudest of because there are so many people using it every day and they're using it silently. And by silently, I mean, I don't hear about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Successfully silent. Yeah.
And that's perfect because that means that we can go and build calculators. We can build things like our product benchmarks tool, which I might not be able to share as quickly, but we can build engineering-led and product integrated tools that are more sophisticated, that are much more complex. And my engineering team can go build those and spend weeks on those rather than serving customer requests in here. And so I think that's a huge secret to how we've been able to grow and really accelerate our growth since the migration and moving forward is we don't have to be spending time on customer requests that are meaningful, but maybe don't drive the top line metrics.
It sounds to me like it kind of sets everyone free. So your engineers used to be tactically just getting stuff out, where the kind of content teams are constantly just wrangling that process. Now everyone is free to, in a sense, be strategic, like work on what is really matter to the business long term. And it sounds to me also like one amazing story is when people then not are kind of burdened by the tactics of it. What was my point? Sorry, that was a message. We should be wrapping up. I just wanted to.
But
sorry. Go ahead.
It's democratizing growth is the way I think about it. Nice. It's really democratizing the ability to learn and test and play with things in a way where that doesn't all have to come through my team. That doesn't all have to go through engineers. You know, we have a person in our company who's a marketing operations specialist, and he wanted to A/B test a new form fill integration tool. We supported him with that. That was probably a few hours of work. And then he went and used our self-serve A/B test tools, tested whether auto-filling forms increased conversion on form fills, and then was able to roll that out. And again, all of that happened without me involved, which is great. Exactly. I love to not be involved and see other people working and using the tools and learning on their own, because it just means that we're all rowing faster and we're all rowing in the same direction much faster. And so I think that's some of the secret sauce we're finding.
That's amazing. Autonomy for everyone, for teams, for individuals. So cool. What to round things off, like what would be, so you're working on the calculators now. What is your, like, can you share some of what's your next big thing that you can share?
Yeah, we are really excited to be finally launching a template library this year. And so we will be launching templates for some of the key questions that we find that product teams, growth teams, data teams are asking that our tools can answer. And so really basic questions about what is the conversion rate for my feature, and how are people adopting my feature? Are people coming back? And we have so many amazing charts that all live within Amplitude that you have to really get into our system and learn it to find them. So we're really excited to be publishing a template library with the goal of later this year letting Amplitude customers actually publish their own templates live to the Amplitude website through Sanity. And so that's our big goal for the year. And we're just kicking off that project as well.
So cool. And I just learned that you can be used as a CDP as well. So I will look into how to integrate that better into Sanity going forward. That sounds amazing.
Yes,
thank you,
CDP
Katie.
is incredible. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was amazing. It was very inspiring, and good luck. And we talk soon. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Bye.